Welcome to another Santa Fe 101 interview. My guest today is Dianne McKenzie, and she is from Kachina Mountain Realty, and she's going to enlighten us about real estate in Taos County as well as Santa Fe County. Dianne, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yes, you do.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, let's. So tell me. I know you've had a varied. You've had a very interesting career, and I. So let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you did before you got into real estate, while you're in real estate, how Santa Fe real estate works, and then we'll talk about Taos.
Okay. I'm originally from San Francisco, California. I got involved with the tech industry back in the early or late 1900s and did a lot of web design and promotion and marketing. I had also met my husband previously, and he does planning and design. So I got involved with his architecture studio as well. So I promoted that. I worked as an architecture assistant. We did a lot of project development work in real estate. And eventually it was just obvious that I needed to get my own license so that I could sell our project. So that's how I originally got into real estate. And then he got a project out in New Mexico about 2004, 2003, sometime around that, and bought some property on the west side, got involved with the development out there. And then I came out with him and realized that I really needed to be licensed in New Mexico. So that's kind of where it all started.
But did you actually sell real estate in San Francisco?
I sold our own projects, but I wasn't licensed at that very moment in time. I only sold our own projects. So I've
Okay.
been selling already and knew a lot about the real estate market and worked up on the Sonoma coast as well as in San Francisco. So
Okay. So when you got to New Mexico, did you live in Santa Fe first?
yes, lived in Santa Fe, of different rentals. And then we eventually finished construction out on the west side in Aldea, which is a community near Las Campanas, has great, wonderful views and rolling hills. And we had a commercial building there on the plaza and eventually opened my office there as well.
And so tell me, what was it like selling real estate in Santa Fe?
It's a lot busier. I'll give you some statistics. There's about 1,500 realtors or so in the Santa Fe area. They sell about 2,300 or 2,400 homes a year just in the Santa Fe area. When I compare it to Taos, there's only like 338 realtors, and we sold just in Taos in 220, 210 properties. So the difference is huge in what we sell versus the two markets. But in Santa Fe, I was dealing with the higher end homes, generally speaking, things that started around 500,000. So, it's a little bit different market than in Taos. Santa Fe is wonderful because in a way it's like a real city, although it has a town atmosphere, whereas Taos is really a town that doesn't have a city atmosphere whatsoever. It's more of a small town, more country in that sense. But Santa Fe, one of the things I loved about Santa Fe is the different districts. There's 5 main districts. There's a center district, and then there's the north side, the south side, the east, and the west side. And I loved being there. I really enjoyed it. But when my husband got really involved with a project up here, he was needing to be up here every day, and commuting every day is a little bit too much. So we decided to move up in, 2017. So I was working in Santa Fe since 2004 through 2017.
So you're currently not selling any real estate in Santa Fe, or do you kind of keep your
No, I do
dabble?
both. Yeah, I have clients still in Santa Fe, so I'm involved with both, real estate MLSs, and I'm looking at real estate property in Santa Fe and around the area all the time. So my market is now shifting. This year, it's going to be more focused in Taos, but in the past, it's been pretty much Santa Fe, even though I moved up here 3 years ago or so. I guess it's 4 years now in 2021.
Well, and I had heard, I mean, I know that all the different counties, because I'm doing these interviews all over the county, there's a real shortage of available inventory right now. But from what I
Oh, yes.
understand, from what I read anyway, is that in Santa Fe, the higher end, there's a lot more higher end homes for sale because I guess fewer people can afford them, or I'm not, there's more, it's easier if you have the money to get into $1 million home than it is to find a $400,000 home. Is that
Right.
okay?
In the lower ranges, and in the middle, anything below 500, it's hard to find in Santa Fe. There are some neighborhoods that, are in that market, but there are more that are over the 500,000 plus. So that makes it hard for affordable housing. It makes it hard for rentals. The rental market is really hard to find. There's a lot of, Airbnb kind of killed the local rental market probably everywhere across the country, that it makes it hard for people who live and work in Santa Fe that would like to be able to rent or buy a house that's in the 300 range. It's hard to find. It's
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in the $300,000 range anymore. But I always tell people that, say we'll just use $1 million, which is not even a lot of money anymore. It's a lot of money
no.
for me, but it's not a lot of money. But I always tell people that if you're coming from somewhere else and you want to live in Santa Fe, you'll get a lot for $1 million, whereas $1 million would get you like maybe a one-bedroom apartment in Midtown Manhattan. But for $1
Oh,
million out in Santa Fe, you still get a pretty cool house, don't you?
yes, you definitely do. And Santa Fe has a market that also is building newer homes. So there's still a lot of properties available for sale that you could actually build in Santa Fe, in Las Campanas, for instance. There are still lots out in El Dorado. So if somebody wants to build their own home, there are places. There's a few lots in Aldea, but not very much anymore. Tessera is built out, for instance. The West Side is almost built out completely, and there's no other place to go. So unless you move outside of Santa Fe itself.
Right.
So,
Well, I always tell people also that, so it's kind of a bittersweet thing for Santa Fe and parts of northern New Mexico, is that we are surrounded. New Mexico is the only state in the union that has 19 distinct Indian pueblos. So we're kind of landlocked in the sense that, where a lot of the land is either, federal land, or it's sovereign property, it's for the Indian pueblos. So it's bittersweet in the sense that we'll never have the urban sprawl of a Phoenix or Denver or a Dallas, some of these cities out here in
right.
the West. So it'll always be beautiful and pristine, but because of that, it's also going to be very expensive.
Yes,
Now,
and it's expensive to build out here too. And I mean, the further west you go outside of Santa Fe, it's more expensive. It's $350 a square foot on up to about 6, 7, or even more. However, if you build in Taos Ski Valley, in the north area, north of Taos, you're talking maybe $500-600 a square foot. So I mean, price range is a lot. I mean, we'd like to keep things around 200 a square foot for people to be able to afford to buy and build, but that's going away very quickly.
and that's kind of the norm, $200 a square foot in
Yeah,
in northern New Mexico.
yes, that's what I would say for a house that's $500,000-600,000. It's about 250 approximately. So, and you can
And
go
you
more
keep
depending on the finishes, of course.
Right. And you keep referring to the west side of Santa Fe. Would that be, again, pardon my ignorance, but is that like the Las Campanas area?
Las Campanas, Aldea, it's from, I guess, the highway over, basically that
So
whole west
anything,
side from
anything,
599.
yeah,
Yeah,
anything to the right of 599 going
right
toward.
to the west of
And then
599.
what about that area? It's like that real pretty area near the Santa Fe Opera. It's like Serrano Drive. Those
Oh,
those are incredibly beautiful homes. What would something like
yes.
that run?
That's around 350 a square foot on up. Homes there are in the 800s on up. Chisuki is also a wonderful area. I love Chisuki. There's not a lot of houses to be found to buy there, but when you can build in Chisuki or buy in Chisuki, that's another neighborhood that has trees and mountains, and that's kind of on the east side of the main highway there. So
That, yeah,
yeah,
Tasuki is so beautiful. And
it
there's a
is.
lot of older Spanish families that have been there for centuries, and they're probably
Yes.
never going to leave there. But yeah, so if you
No,
can find something in Tasuki, that's it.
sure.
That's, you're really lucky there. So you also you sell lots in Santa Fe. So what would a lot, like, what is the average size of a lot? Is it an acre in Las Campanas, or what would it?
Oh, in Las Campanas, it's an acre on up. I mean, there really aren't any half-acre lots. A lot of them are 2 acres, and then some more. But I sold mostly out in Aldea for a while. Those were quarter-acre lots. and they were going for 150. You could occasionally find one for under 100,000, but that's really rare now. I mean, you won't find anything that's available there. I
And so
think
like
there's one or two available.
Aldea and Las Campanas, they're basically pretty developed areas. So do they have their own water system, or would you still have to dig your own individual well if you bought a lot, say in Las Campanas? Or is there a water system already out there?
Okay, Las Campanas has its own water system.
Oh, good.
And Aldea is joined to Santa Fe water system. It's really the county water, even though it's the same water.
So that's the good thing. And if you did buy a lot on the west side, you're not going to have to dig your own well. That's already
you're not doing it with wells.
Okay. And then you're saying that construction is pretty, it's really expensive. Is that because they have like all these laws and permits in place and green building? And I've heard that it's kind of a pain to build in Santa Fe. Is that true?
Well, if you're in Santa Fe downtown, you've got historic situations, and you also have traffic situation. I mean, it's very different and complex. When we were building out on the west side, out in Aldea, and to the west of Aldea even, or out in Las Campanas, you're not dealing with wells, generally speaking. You're tying into county water. It used to be city water. It's the same water. It's not any different. But I can tell you the same house built in Aldea for say 250, 300 a square foot. If you were to build the exact same house out in Las Campanas, at $100 a square foot minimum for the exact same house, partly because it's further out. And so the builders have to drive an extra 15 minutes and all the other tradespeople, but they also put up a bond, and it's a lot, you have to fence off your property, and there's a lot more rules and regulations. And the people that are buying out there, lots are 150 to 250,000. So it's like, it's a different market than Aldea. It's
right.
more,
and then it's kind of gated community, and you probably
it's gated. It's a golf community, although not everybody belongs to the golf course. But it has amazing views and amazing ridges that you can see forever, and you have a lot more privacy. You don't have a neighbor next door where you could practically wave to them. You really have to have, if you want more privacy, it has great views, and it's a wonderful community in that sense.
And the average lots there are at least 2 acres, or
yeah, about 2 acres.
Okay. Well, let's switch speeds here. Let's talk about real estate in Taos. So now you've been selling real estate in Taos for at least 3 years, and I know you have a big project that'll be coming up in the spring or summer that we can talk about during another interview. But let's talk about, like, what is the median cost of a home in Taos these days?
Well, if the medium home, and I'm just looking at my notes, I can give you something exacting. If the medium or average price home in Santa Fe is about 600, that gives you an idea that in Taos, it's about the same, except that there's very little of the housing. There's very little housing. Taos is a housing shortage. So, that is a problem to begin with. There's a lot of older homes. If you want something newer, there's not many areas that are building in newer homes at this moment in time. And some of the older homes are wonderful and charming, and they've got vigas and, beam ceilings and thick adobe walls or plaster walls. But they also come with, sometimes they don't have the double pane windows, the electricity's old, there's a lot of mold. Because the things get damp. So there isn't a lot of new projects being done here in Taos. So there really is a housing shortage. When people come here to rent, it takes a month to find something to rent. But the average price is around 500 to 600,000 for homes, even though some of them are, I would say not the same standard as what you'd find in Santa Fe. It's a little more country, it's more laid back. There's more dirt roads, whereas Santa Fe is pretty much paved roads. You go out to Las Campanas or Aldea or go down to the south side of Rancho Viejo or any of those are all paved roads. In Taos, you can go on dirt roads for quite a while.
Well, I grew up here in Santa Fe, and I always say that Taos is what Santa Fe was back in the 1960s. I remember when there was just one street light in Taos, and so it's kind of what Santa Fe used to be like.
Sure.
So I'm assuming then that in Taos, the vast majority of homes there are made of adobe versus tract homes.
Correct, there are. I mean, you'll find most of the older homes, they have a lot of wonderful character, but they also come with a old character, old house
Well, a lot of people
quality
are looking, that's
with
what they
it.
want. They want that
Yeah,
Adobe feel. But I know that
yeah,
like Wi-Fi is an issue. I mean, there's a lot of drawbacks to Adobe. So you have to kind of know what you're getting into because it's going to be
sure,
expensive. But it is in the long run, if you can afford an Adobe home in northern New Mexico, that's really the way to go, I think.
sure. Well, when I was selling more in Santa Fe, what I found are people were looking for the Santa Fe look, but they wanted it to be a little bit more modern, more sharp edges, more larger windows, floor to ceiling glass in a living room, for instance, as opposed to smaller glass. And I still see that happening here. It just isn't available yet at this moment in time. And the other thing that's different about Taos is Taos isn't just like Santa Fe's, it's city, and then there's El Dorado, and there's a few other places, around, but Taos has distinct neighborhoods. There's about 35 neighborhoods. If you include Angel Fire to the east of us, which is in the mountains more, it's got pine trees. I mean, it's not the piñons, it's really pine and foresty. And then you can go all the way up to Red River, and that's a different community. I don't really sell in Red River unless I get a client that really wants me to work with them in Red River. I usually turn them over to a realtor up there that knows that property. It's very different. We've got the area out west to the gorge, and then beyond, we've got areas to the south of Taos. So 35 different neighborhoods, and we call it all kind of Taos because it's the Taos experience. I mean, there's Taos Ski Valley. Arroyo Seco is a charming town on the way to Taos Ski Valley, but town, I mean, it has 10 shops, so it's not a town.
And then as you're entering
It's
Taos,
all
there's
kind of,
ranchos to Taos. That's like the little community you go into.
yes.
Right.
That's at the beginning, and that's where the church is, and that's a lot of historic properties that are there, with the Sakias and owned by land grant families that have been there for a long time. So yeah, that's to the south in Taos.
And
So
what
it's
about those
just
little
variety.
communities as you're driving up to Taos? There's like a few little communities as you get closer to Taos along the Rio Grande. There's a little communities. Do you
Yes.
sell real estate there at all?
Uh, for, my office is in El Prado, and that is 10 minutes south of Taos Ski Valley. It's 10 minutes north of the town of Taos. We're 5 minutes to the post office. El Prado is kind of on the way, and it's right off of 150.
Okay.
And that's where our project is that we're going to be submitting to county. So we'll talk more about that. But there's Blueberry Hills, a different area that, that is further out to the west where you can sort of see for miles, and you get people there buy 1 acre properties. And a lot of the property that is where people are looking to buy and there are available homes are about 1 acres. Some of them are 2 acre properties, but most of them are 1 acres, and those are generally on wells.
And
So
what would something
getting,
like that, if somebody's looking for something, maybe not in the town of Taos, but in proximity to that, what would something like that cost? Just a
well,
lot, not even a house.
a lot, just under 100,000 for a 1 acre lot, somewhere around there. And then you have to put in your well and bring your electricity in, which is usually fairly close by. If you go north into Cuesta or Des Moines or some of the other areas, oftentimes you have to bring your electricity, for several miles. But here, it's all pretty close by.
And so
So
what was,
about
you said
100,000.
earlier, what is the square, the price per foot, like in the Taos area versus Santa Fe? What would that be again?
About 200 is kind of where I see things. Some builders are building what I'd call more cookie cutter, in the sense that they've got the plans and you can change the materials and surfaces, but they're at somewhere around 175, maybe 150 builder cost. But it's in the 200 range can get you a very nice house.
So it
Once
is,
again,
so it is, I guess what we could take from this interview is the Taos is a much more affordable
definitely,
in
yes.
northern New Mexico than Santa Fe these days.
Yes, it's definitely more affordable in that sense. But then there are exceptions. So if you go into Taos Ski Valley, there isn't very much there available. It costs more to build there because you're at higher altitudes. You're at 10,000 feet when you're building up there. So it costs 350. I don't think you can build anything for 250 up there. It's just not possible.
Well, I think
And
people that are going to live that close to the ski basin, it's probably just a seasonal home. I don't, they're probably there
generally, yeah.
for the summer. They're not there probably year round, I don't think.
Right. They have 60 residents year round in Taos right now. I mean, in Taos Ski Valley. And that's not very many, but they have, several hundred owners who have condos. And some of the condos that are selling at the Blake Hotel, however, put things off the charts. I mean, $2 million for a 3-bedroom condo. So
well, that's for a whole other market. Those are the people
totally
who fly in to ski for the weekend and then they fly back to God knows where.
Exactly.
So I know Santa Fe's population, we're just about at 85,000 right now. So for like the town of Taos and like those little communities you mentioned, what would the population of Taos be right around now, approximation?
About 5,000 maybe related to the town of Taos and a little burgs outside of it.
So it's way different. I mean, it's
yes,
much smaller than Santa Fe. So people, if they're listening to this interview, they need to consider that they really are moving to a cool small town.
It's very cool.
It's not going to have, it probably doesn't have although it's probably changing, it probably doesn't have the diversity in terms of people and different things that Santa Fe has.
Just doesn't, it has diversity in the sense that it's eclectic, it's creative. There's a variety of population types of people of all different types, which is really nice. It's very open and accepting of all different types, which is also very liberal in that sense, but it's just smaller. I mean, there's three main grocery stores. One of them is a natural kind of grocery store. So it doesn't have the variety that you get, but we have several banks in town. US Bank is here. So, that's really good. But we, the title companies, we only have 2. Right now it takes 7 weeks to close a transaction.
Is that, I don't know much about your business. Is 7 weeks a long time?
Yes, because I can close it in Santa Fe in 3 weeks if I really need to.
Wow.
So, 4 weeks, we always tell people 30 days, but I have closed things sooner than that. So, it depends. But right now, the title companies, there's only 2 of them, and they're doing a lot of properties. Now, the most amount of sales comes from Angel Fire, which is hard to believe. It's like Angel Fire is a small community also that I think has only 1 grocery store and it's very tiny, but it has a larger community for building and there's still a lot of building available there. And most of the people that build over in Angel Fire are on 1-acre properties with wells and they're vacation homes. We get a lot of people coming up from Texas or coming down from Oklahoma or Colorado. And Angel Fire just has more space. It's cheaper than Taos by a little bit. So, you can get a variety of homes there in the mountains, but it's kind of has more mountain architecture than it would be the Pueblo looking architecture.
Right. So well, you definitely need to have the pitched roofs up there because of all the snow.
All the snow. Yes, absolutely. Well, we get snow here in Taos, but it's pretty enough just to make it look lovely, but we're not getting 2 feet of snow in a snowstorm.
Speaking of Taos, I'm right in front of the Taos Gorge right now. Can you see
that? Yes, I see that. Yes, I know. I love your backgrounds.
That's a nice way to segue into ending the interview. Anything else you want to just say before we end? I'm going to I want to talk to you more in the spring about some of the other projects you're working on. But for today, anything you want to leave us with in terms of buying a house in Taos versus Santa Fe, or just in general? Is there any what you want to end with?
Well, Taos has great restaurants. It has a lot of entertainment and music, and it has a lot of arts and culture events and classes that you can take from painting to pottery to photography. There's, hiking and skiing, of course, and river rafting and ballooning. It has a lot of the same features. We have opera in the summertime. So, that's always wonderful. And in fact, our opera is free. You can go around to the different venues that they have it for several weeks. So it has a lot of cultural activities. It's a little cheaper than buying in Santa Fe. You generally get more of an open feeling space. It's not a city. It's definitely a town. And there's just, still a wildness about it that makes it really more intriguing and exciting to be here.
Like I said, it's Taos is Santa Fe back in the 1960s. But well, good. I
Yeah,
want to
I
thank.
it's probably true.
Well, I grew up here. This is my hometown, so it kind of had that cool, funky feel. It doesn't anymore. It's more now. We're kind of a
Yep, it's still.
small town, is what it is here. But I love Santa Fe. This is my hometown. Dianne McKenzie, Kachina Mountain Realty. I want to thank you for this interview today. I'll put all your details on the website, and then we'll be back in touch very soon.
Great.
I do thank you.
Sure.